Annie Jacobsen is a journalist and the author of the current international bestseller, Nuclear War, A Scenario. I urge you, if you have not yet read it, to do so. Ms. Jacobsen is also the Pulitzer Prize finalist in history for The Pentagon's Brain, and her other New York Times bestsellers include Area 51, Operation Paperclip, and Surprise, Kill, Vanish. She also writes for TV. A graduate of Princeton University, she lives in LA with her husband and 2 sons. Her books have been named Best of the Year and Most Anticipated by outlets including The Washington Post, USA Today, The Boston Globe, Apple and Amazon. Coverage has ranged from The Wall Street Journal to The Economist to Joe Rogan's podcast. Annie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you, delegates, everyone here. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. I am Annie Jacobsen, a journalist and author. I was going to have a slide presentation. We had some technical challenges, and the key moment was said to me, another reason tech cannot be trusted. And of course, AI and nuclear weapons have no place together. So with that said, I'm going to ask you all to use your imaginations. Hopefully that's all we ever do. So in reporting Nuclear War, A Scenario, I wanted to know, and I wanted you to know, what happens if deterrence fails. I put this question to 46 former presidential advisors, secretaries of defense, commander of STRATCOM, commander of the nuclear sub-forces for the United States, people like Richard Garwin, who advised every president since Eisenhower on nuclear weapons, and was the architect of the first hydrogen or thermonuclear bomb. When Teller couldn't make it explode, Richard Garwin did. He was 24 years old. I asked retired General Robert Keeler, the commander of U.S. Strategic Command, steward of all U.S. nuclear weapons and all U.S. nuclear weapons systems, what would happen in a full-scale nuclear exchange with Russia? And he said to me, Annie, the world could end in the next couple of hours. That is the true cost of nuclear weapons. So today there are approximately 2,300 nuclear weapons on this planet. Between Russia and the United States alone, there are more than 3,000 nuclear weapons on ready-for-launch status. Some of them can launch in under a minute. And I'm going to quote Bruce Blair here, who said of the U.S. ICBMs, they don't call them Minutemen for nothing. There is no such thing as a limited nuclear war. Every nuclear war game conducted by the Pentagon demonstrates this. In my book, I show a drawing, or rather a declassified document, an image of what a declassified page from a nuclear war game from the Pentagon looks like. It is entirely blacked out, redacted. There is one word you can read. It says scenario. Everything else is black. And my observation is that the Pentagon thinks it's unwise for people to know what will happen in a nuclear exchange. I disagree. And I was going to now take you through slides very quickly, 6 minutes quickly, because that is how much time the United States President has to make a decision once he is told by his presidential advisors, many of whom I interviewed, how much time he has to make a nuclear counterattack. So really reminding you here that nuclear war unfolds in seconds and minutes, not in hours and days. If North Korea were to launch a bolt out of the blue attack against Washington, D.C., it will take just 33 minutes for the nuclear weapon to travel on an ICBM from Pyongyang to Washington, D.C. An ICBM cannot be redirected or recalled. President Obama's top nuclear advisor, Andrew Weber, told me a bolt out of the blue attack against Washington is what Washington fears most. So what happens very quickly, and if we had slides, you would see them, you will use your imagination. The ICBM launches from Pyongyang. It takes less than 1 second for U.S. satellite systems in space to detect the launch of the nuclear weapon. U.S. space-based systems calculate that trajectory, and they learn in seconds the ICBM is headed toward the United States. In the next 1 to 3 minutes, senior military officials will characterize that threat from inside 3 nuclear bunkers underground. One, famously from all the movies, the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. Another, the National Military Command Center beneath the Pentagon. And the third is the Stratcom Battle Deck beneath Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. 250 seconds have passed. That's 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Confirmation. Now the Defense Department knows the ICBM is headed toward the continental United States. 250 seconds, guys. The Missile Defense Agency in the United States begins preparing its interceptor missiles will try and intercept the incoming nuclear-armed ICBM. The U.S. has 44 interceptor missiles. Russia has 1,670 nuclear weapons on ready-for-launch status. You can do the math. Each interceptor missile has a success rate of less than 50%. The Missile Defense Agency told me, yes, it is like shooting a bullet with a bullet. The trillion-dollar system, the SBX radars out at sea, they try to accurately track the incoming nuclear warhead. It has been 9 minutes. It fails. In Alaska, ground radars, U.S. ground radar systems, give that secondary confirmation that is required for the President of the United States to launch a nuclear counterattack. Secondary confirmation required. But the President must act. U.S. launch on warning protocol is exactly like it sounds. When warned of an incoming nuclear missile attack against the United States, the U.S. launches. It doesn't wait to absorb a nuclear blow. We have, in the United States, sole presidential authority. It's just like it sounds. The U.S. president alone gives the counterattack. He asks permission of no one, not the Secretary of Defense, not the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not the Congress. At 22 minutes now, this is the last sighting from radars in North Dakota that incoming ICBM will strike Washington in 11 minutes. If a rogue nation were to launch a single strategic ballistic missile at the U.S., the response would be overwhelming force, some 80 to 82 nuclear weapons in response. Now it goes. The B-2 bombers take off. The nuclear-armed U.S. ICBMs launch. The nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered submarines launch their missiles. They call them the handmaidens of the apocalypse. UN Secretary General Guterres has told us humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation. And here's where that happens. The U.S.'s ICBM targeting systems, so the U.S. ICBMs targeting North Korea, don't have enough range to get to North Korea without overflying Russia, a fact confirmed with me by former U.S. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta. Russia thinks it's being attacked. Russia's command and control system mirrors that of the United States. Theirs is the equivalent of the bunkers that we have, they have. The radars that we have, they have, albeit less technical. And so Russia, thinking it's being attacked, launches. Russian doctrine, like U.S. doctrine, is to launch the mother lode of weapons. And there are more than 1,000 targets in the United States. All of Europe, NATO bases in particular, are targeted too. And when the U.S. learns Russian nuclear missiles are on their way, the U.S. launches the mother lode, a fact also confirmed with me by 2 former U.S. Secretaries of Defense. This is doctrine. That is the full-scale nuclear exchange. When nuclear winter theory was first written and presented to the world in 1983, the Defense Department called it Soviet propaganda. But behind the veil, the Pentagon knew it was true. The soot from thousands of fires burning will block out the sun's warming rays. Agriculture will fail. People will freeze and starve. State-of-the-art climate modeling today shows us that nuclear winter will be far worse than originally conceived. 5 billion people will die. The mid-latitudes, the breadbasket of the world, freeze over. Agriculture fails. In this depraved, radiation-poisoned world, the humans that remain will likely return to a hunter-gatherer state. And in my book, I have a photograph of a Neolithic site from 12,000 years ago, when humans were still hunter-gatherers, when we hunted and fought with spears. In the dawn of the nuclear age, Albert Einstein was asked what he thought about nuclear war, to which he is said to have responded, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Before archaeologists discovered Göbekli Tepe, that's the name of that Neolithic site I have a photograph of in my book, and this was in the 1990s when it was discovered. Before that, for 12,000 years, no one knew that civilization was there. And so how did they find it? I asked the archaeologists who found it. And they told me that when they went there in southern Turkey, a local rumor persisted. Locals told the archaeologists the story of the wishing tree. It's a power of great mystery, a place of power and great mystery, they said, a place where people went to make wishes for the future. And in the book, I also show you a photograph of this wishing tree, because there it was on the horizon. That is how they found Göbekli Tepe. That is how they knew where to dig. It was hidden. And so I end my remarks with this thought. Wishing is foundational to living. Many of us in this room wish all nuclear weapons would go away. Wishing leads to discovery, and it leads to action. There is more work to do. Thank you all for listening to me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie, for that vivid depiction of how quickly a nuclear war could start and how quickly it would escalate, which is also backed up by the outcomes of so many war games and nuclear exercises that it seems impossible that any military or government in a nuclear-armed state could be under any illusion about the fallacy of a limited nuclear war.